Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of SPL Waiting Room. I'm Agro and a very sleepy Mackenzie over my shoulder, and we're going to bring you here in order to get you prepared for this week in the SPL and, of course, recap you. But speaking of last week, I want to start the show by talking about what the headline was from last week. It was that Solar Troll has been benched by Renegades. This week, he is now back and playing for this team, and that might seem a little bit weird, and I agree that it is. But after talking a whole bunch to Barracuda on our podcast, search the Backliners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, by the way, he told me that they looked around other esports and that this sort of thing was very, very common. Just benching player for a week, seeing if they could reset their mental, and then bringing them back and seeing how they perform. And if Solar Troll pops off this week, I feel like we kind of have to give Renegades credit for making an outside-the-box move that many teams would not. I think a lot of teams in that sort of position would just make the roster change. Now, it still, of course, remains to be seen if Solar Troll is going to perform well this week, if all of the issues for Renegades were on that side of the map, which I don't think that you can say fairly that they were. There are a lot of moving pieces for a Smite team, and just getting Solar Troll back on track will not move Renegades number one in the standings, but we'll see if that's going to be enough to at least right the ship in the short term for this team this week. Now, we are going to be doing some trivia later on in the show, as we did last week, but last week, a couple of you had some problems, including our winner, with linking those accounts. So make sure if you hover on your thing, on your screen, it should be like right around this area, roughly. Enable the extension, link your account. We're going to be doing some trivia later on. We want to be able to give kudos to who actually won, not trivia contestant 4,943. So link those accounts when you can. Of course, we do have to get you caught up on what happened all of last week, not just for the Renegades. And for that, we've got Dave and Finch as written by Finch and Dave.
All right, well, welcome in for another episode of the weekly recap, this time for week 6, obviously with Finch and Dave. The way this works is that we write these scripts for each other, then read them for the very first time right here and now as we are recording, so that's all for your pleasure. It was a bad weekend to watch the SPL if you had to get up from your desk a lot, and Space Station versus PK would get the ball rolling. The SSG came into this matchup on a 2-set win streak, but both win all 3 games, so the squad was hoping for a quicker win this time around, and they got it. Vote gets Freya back-to-back, and Cheerio has a fantastic game 2 to clean up the Knights in relatively quick fashion.
Renegades played with their coach in solo, and the hope was that they showed potential that would help them in their set against Obey on Saturday. Even that hope, though, was too optimistic, and Sanguine made quick work of them in 2 games.
Yeah, that's right, Dolson. We're on Saturday, and there's absolutely no way this day is as short as Friday. I will put all of my money on it, and that is a verbal, confirmable bet.
All right.
Ghost versus
Lock it in.
United. That's right, is up first, and Twig had a tough time right off the bat in Game 1. But no one else did on Ghost. Fino didn't die in this set, that's nuts. Panda dies once, PBM dies twice, and E-United win 0.
That's right, we're on to Renegades versus Obey, Finch, and this was poised to be the closest set of the weekend. Obey, who have been improving against Renegades, who hoped that a solo lane change would turn their fortunes around. Unfortunately, we could not have been more wrong. The only way we could have been more wrong is if we thought I'd ever miss once with a chair ad.
That's right.
Very flattering. Sanguine beat Renegades in about an hour, but Obey were looking to speedrun.
We had only 1 set on Sunday. Well, hopefully 2 late-game teams. Yeah, it's Space Station Sanguine can push us a little further in this one. Game 1 goes 40 minutes and a Space Station win, so that's a good start for my wallet at least. But Game 2 does not go 40 minutes, closer to half of that. And Space Station will finish off the set in 2-0 fashion. Since there was only 1 set on Sunday, that's going to do it for us here, Dave. That is the SPL Weekly Recap as written by Finch and Dave, but as read by Dave and Finch. I don't know how I do the outro, Dave. Maybe you can give me some tips later. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with another recap, and make sure you check out SPL Week 7.
All right, joining us now on the waiting room as we move forward into this week, we've got Gore Miser and the aforementioned John Finch. And fellas, we're going to play a little game, not really jigsaw style, though that's kind of the way I introed this segment, but one that I think is going to be much more fun for everybody involved. And this is like the Goldilocks God segment. Are these gods in pro play overvalued, undervalued, or just right? That's what we're going to find out here today. And I want to start it off with Cupid, because Cupid is a god that has been really, really impressive. Basically, every team that's picked him has looked good on this god, but Gormizer, teams picking him too early. Some teams are taking him first overall.
definitely needs to be picked, and I actually think we should see him picked up more often than we are. But I don't know if I'm swinging with the obey first pick Cupid every game kind of strategy, right? I think he's someone that fits in really well, does a lot when it comes to either sieging or defending. You can back off, heal up. He has a lot of good damage. A nice little mix of the hunter attack based and then ability based that you're going to be able to bring with him. Good team fight, but again, I'm not sure if I'm picking him over Hercules, a Yamoja, and a Matarasu right now because it's just, he's good, but he's still a hunter. They're going to kind of chill over there in the duo lane until the late game and then come over and steal the glory.
That's kind of been the MO for Cupid, though. Some teams, including United, have played him in the mid lane, Finch. Where do you fall on Cupid?
No, I think that they've got Cupid valued just right here at this point because exactly what you just said, he's got this sort of duality, right? You can pick him earlier on in your draft, and then the other team doesn't know if you're going to be coming back around for another hunter later or if he's going to be going into the mid, to the hunter. If they want to play around this Cupid, it is a little bit difficult for them. But I also think there's not a whole lot of really strong hunters right now, right? I mean, a lot of the mage ADCs are permabanned, and I think we'll get to Freya later, maybe a little bit too much value on them. It's Rom and Cupid for me right now in terms of the hunter role, so I think that they've got Cupid right at the right spot. You want this guy on your team.
Well, Gormizer, you mentioned another god that maybe should be valued over Cupid, and that's Amaterasu. She has been dominating the solo lane, much to, say, Nika's chagrin, who, even though he picks her every game, says he doesn't want to. Where do you think Ama falls here? Do you think teams are somehow still undervaluing this god?
It's going to be weird, but I'm going to say yes to that because I feel like there are some games where she's not picked at all, and that still blows my mind just considering what we've seen. Cthulhu is usually the one that goes kind of first for that solo lane god pick, but if you're not picking Amaterasu either afterward or banning her, then something has gone wrong dramatically in picks and bans, or maybe you're just feeling confident. I mean, I feel like, fine, okay, wants some of that flavor, that spice that comes into the lane, not playing the same god every time, but you've seen it, at least with SSG, you said Nika doesn't really like playing it, but every single time they bring it in, it's game-changing for them. That's just the power she brings. I think she should be there more often. Put her up front. I want to see more Amaterasu.
And maybe even in support, Finch. We haven't seen that a whole lot, but I feel like she's strong enough that you could flex her. Where do you fall on this god?
I'm with Gore on this, but I think undervalued. You all have already given me the best argument I can possibly make for it, which is that somehow the Nika still seems to be getting it every single game. How does this man get to play it 10 times in a row after the types of things that we've seen him do on it? This is the type of thing that I think could stand to be perma-banned in some of these situations. I think we might be spending a little bit too much time banning some other things that could be allowed through. And this god's so strong right now. It's gotten better presence in the laning phase. It used to be that you had to pick on Amaterasu and kind of deal with a pretty weak early game, but that's not even the truth anymore. She's able to flex into this auto attack build with a Frostbound Hammer in there a lot of the time, so she has this added utility in all these extra slows she's providing too. Amaterasu's real strong right now, and I think that you could be standing to pick her even sooner than we've seen lately.
I'm with you guys. Ama better than Cthulhu. You heard it here first.
Yep.
She's better.
I
really think that. I really think that way. All right, moving back over to the long lane, Finch. You mentioned Freya. This goddess has been seeing a lot of priority, then got some nerfs and Hecate nerfs, but still seeming to be picked top 3 a whole lot. Where do you find yourself on Freya?
Well, kind of as you're alluding to there, Aggro, I do think that she might be falling slightly into that overvalued category right now, and there's a couple reasons why I think that. You talked about those nerfs. Freya's early game has gotten to the point now where I'd call it abysmal. How often do we see SPL caliber hunters picking this pick and then falling 2 to 3 levels behind during the laning phase? It's just because her ability to clear is really lacking, I think, right now, and then when you even get into the team fights, she could struggle. There are decent counter matches out there that can make this Freya struggle. Once she hits that 2, anyone that can block off autos, anyone that can find the disarm, anyone that can stop her from getting her damage in while she's in that pulse, I think makes Freya basically irrelevant. She's certainly still strong if she can make it to the late game and she's against the right comp, but I think instead of an evergreen pick, this is someone you could stand to pick a bit later in the draft and you can make sure she's not going to get bullied or countered out.
Gore, how about for you? Where do you fall on Freya?
Well, it's weird because she's been played in about a third of the games so far here in Phase 2, and she's won 3/4 of those, so she has a great win rate. She does really well statistically, but I think she is overvalued if you're not Gaijay, right? Anybody else in the league, everyone else seems to have kind of figured out how to deal with her or shut her down, as Finch had kind of alluded to. So maybe overvalued. We saw Netrioid trying to pick her up a lot for Sanguine, and then they got smacked a couple times in a row while they were valuing it, and now it's just fallen off the list for them. But for some reason, for E United, I don't think you could value this enough because Gaijay makes it look so different. So for 99.9% of the league, she's overvalued. But for Guy J, it's just right.
Interesting. That's definitely a good shout there for Guy J. All right, final one on our list here is Kuzenbo, a god that should absolutely destroy the last goddess we were talking about in Freya. Kuzenbo has been rising up these Guardian ranks, but has it been a little bit too fast for your liking, Gormizer?
No, I actually think he should be picked up a little bit more often, at least for me, because I love the way that this dual lane has been this year. Hercules has been very popular, Yamoja very popular, and I think Kuzenbo deserves to be up there. You're looking at least of the ones that I've listed, picks that are great at setting up kills, or setting up your either carry or your mid, or whoever you happen to be near to find something. Kuzenbo does that even better, and to quote Mifflin here, he punishes you for playing well, right? You pop your spikes, and all of a sudden they're taking more damage in the middle of the fray. I just think it allows you to disrupt so much, and as a support player, it lets you feel the impact. You have something tangible you can latch onto that you are doing for your team, and I think that is just so valuable in a pick.
Finch, how about for you? Do you feel like it's been a little bit too quick for Kuzenbo's rise, or maybe not fast enough?
Yeah, I think that I'd have to kind of go in the middle with this one with a just right answer here for Kuzenbo, because he does a lot of things really, really well, but I don't know if he's always going to be your pick. He's great, obviously, with the reflect damage and punishing some of these auto-attack building hunters who are used to being able to chew through some of the frontliners. His early game presence is pretty strong, too. If you've ever been pushed through a wave by Kuzenbo, then you know what I'm talking about. And Watery Grave, how do we not talk about this ultimate more often? It's ludicrous. It does decent-ish damage, but it's so disruptive during those team fights. I'd like to say it functions almost like a silence, because there's so little you can do during that Watery Grave the whole time. You certainly can't get any abilities or anything off where you're constantly being knocked up. He's a versatile pick. I think he can potentially do a little bit of support or solo action, but you don't need to pick him all the time. You want things like Yamoja or Hercules or some of these other supports if you can get them, but you don't feel bad dropping down to Kuzenbo.
I think that's a pretty good way to wrap us up there for the Goldilocks segment. Thank you, fellas. Now it's time for something with a little bit more of a tangible answer. It's trivia time. Again, if you haven't linked your account, you've got to do so on that extension if you want to put your name up on the leaderboards. Now, how this works, we'll ask the question. The faster you get the answer, the more points you'll get. So don't feel like you have to wait for me to finish asking you. Just slam that answer as soon as you think you know it. And the winner at the end will Gore will say, hey, nice job, man, to you in particular. So that's a big win for you. Okay, question number one. And I hope you've been following Gormizer on Twitter, because that's where I stole this question directly from. Who was the first player to get to 100 kills in Phase 2? Your options are Sam for Soccer 2, Adapting, Cyclone Spin, or Big Man Tings. Finch, I'm assuming you are on the notification gang for Gormizer. Like, you already know this answer, right?
I am on the notification page for Gormizer. My man Gore puts out those stats. I'm there checking them. But I don't know if I 100% remember this one. I'll give you this advice out there, Chad. It's got to be a jungler, right? No way it's Tiggs or a hunter. It's got to be one of those junglers, so vote for them.
Well, you were right, but it was the jungler for Ghost in particular. It was Sam for Soccer 2, the first one get to 100 kills. Of course, Gore had more stats about Sam's incredible Phase 2 on his Twitter page, which you should be following, because then you'd also know the answer to question number 2, which I also stole directly from Gormizer's Twitter account. 3 of these gods have not been picked in all of Season 7. Which one of these 4 has been picked in Season 7? Your options are Apollo, Vulcan, Anubis, and Izanami.
This one I do know, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Finch knows this one. Gore, I'm assuming you remember as well?
I remember this one. I've pored over this list several times just to make sure I didn't make a mistake at any given moment. So, yeah.
A lot of these gods start with A.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a painful amount. For A gods, it's a devastating year.
Man, we got to get some buffs towards the beginning of the alphabet, man. That is tough. That is absolutely tough. By the way, guys, make sure that you are granting permissions to the quiz extension. You just got to hover your mouse over the screen. You'll have a little option there. Make sure you enable that. The answer, by the way, is Izanami, which is crazy, by the way, that like Apollo hasn't been picked, but Izanami has been. Pick Apollo, man. He's better than you think. I don't understand. Okay.
I think so too.
Question 3. This one is not from Gormizer's Twitter. Zeus is the quote-unquote leader of the Greek pantheon in Greek mythology. So who is the quote-unquote leader of the Egyptian pantheon? Your options are Geb, Osiris, Ra, and Horus. Gormizer, you got an initial feeling for me?
Man, I'm trying to remember mythology. Because, like, the symbol you always think of when you think Egyptian, that little eye, is called the Eye of Horus, so I always want to lean, like, that way. but I also always remember thinking of Ra as kind of like the guy in Egyptian mythology, so I really actually don't know.
Well, good news, Gormizer. You were right the second time, I suppose. Ra does hold the Eye of Horus, but it's Ra who is the leader of Egyptian mythology. That one actually brought to me, I think, by Smite Game Chat the other day. We were talking about who was leading Egyptian pantheons and that kind of stuff. That, I don't know about you guys, but that's initially what got me into playing Smite in the first place, was my love of mythology.
Absolutely. No, that was the same for me. It's weird because I latched on to Hebo, who is in a mythology that I had never heard about. Like, you grow up, you hear a lot about Egyptian, a lot about Greek, and then I was like, hey, that guy I've never heard of. He seems sick. Let's play that guy.
In a move that is absolutely surprising to nobody, the victor this week is Flare Boot. Shocker. This is my surprised face.
Come on. Let everyone else have some fun, Flare Boot. Come on, bud.
Yeah. All right, Flare Boot, you got your win. Now it's time to let everyone else play, because Flare Boot is the encyclopedia for Smite knowledge, it feels like. Make sure you guys are checking out the SMITEPro YouTube, by the way, because of all the great content that we're putting out there, including this recent player spotlight video. I got a chance to sit down and talk in depth with Sino, talking about his career and what it's been like going from the SCL to MVP world champion in SWC. So here's a little preview of my sit down with Sino.
I actually didn't play jungle at all when I first started playing. I was mainly a mid laner. I would just play Hades mid almost every single game when I first started. And I would just build like the rings, like Fatalis, and I don't know why. Like, I was so bad, but that's what I liked doing. That's what I did back in the day. And then I also played ADC a decent amount, but I did not. I hated jungling when I first started playing.
What has changed for you since then? Because Hades still the play, but now at least it's in the jungle. What made you want to go over to the jungle?
My junglers were useless, pretty much. You know, I had to take it into my own hands, you know? You just have to do that sometimes.
And as I'm sure you understood back then and now, every game is jungle diff, one way or the other,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It was jungle diff, so I'm figured if there's going to be jungle diff, it might as well be in my favor, you know?
Again, everybody, make sure you're going to the SMITEPro YouTube and Smite VOD YouTube. That's where you can find either our great content that we do around the SPL or VODs of the actual SPL matches themselves. There are going to be a whole bunch of new ones after this week, because we've got another week of the SPL coming up. And let's take a look at that schedule coming up here, fellas, because I think that this one is going to be pretty interesting. Of course, if you haven't seen our announcement on Twitter, the Radiant Sanguine set on Saturday has been rescheduled, so we'll need to get that to a later date. But overall, this week is one where some of these bottom-end teams have got to start to make some noise, fellas. I'm looking later on today at PKE United as a pretty important set.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too, Aggro. I mean, that's got to be the set where there is maybe the most closest chance, I think, for some kind of upset to end up happening. The Knights at E United. Knights have not looked the best, and I do think E United has looked okay. They go to 3 a lot, even though they have struggled there lately. So I agree with you. I got my eyes on that one to see if E United can make anything happen.
A team that has yet to find a win in phase number 2, but as you mentioned, consistently goes to game number 3. But as I talked about at the very beginning of the show, a lot of eyes this week are going to be on the Renegades, and in particular, how Solar Troll performs on that right side of the map. Gore, is there anything in particular you're looking for out of Solar Troll and the Renegades this weekend, or is it just to try and get a general feel of if they're going to return to form?
Well, I think it really is just the general feel for their return to form, right? One of the things I think Solar Troll has done well for Renegades is just wide variety of picks that are comfortable over there in the solo lane. It's obviously worked out well for them. For the most part, we've never really looked at the solo lane as the weak link for the Renegades. And honestly, it's really one of those teams that's difficult to break down as to where things were causing trouble. And you follow up on what they were saying, that maybe they just needed a reset week. Maybe this is the time they come in, comms are a little bit better, cleaner, everyone's feeling a little more solid about it after last week's, let's just face it, rough performance overall for everybody. So this might be their chance to just jump back in and have some good games. Whether you get a win or not, it's that reset period, that time to be able to just say, look, we're on the right track again.
Finch, do you think that there's a lot of pressure on Solar Troll to perform here after being benched and now having a chance to come back and play again on this main roster?
Maybe so. I really think the pressure is on Solo or Troll to make sure that his mental is on point. It really sounds like to me the environment on the team was what was really deteriorating. I mean, obviously they were losing, but just maybe that making sure they were all on the same page and having the most healthy response to even if they were struggling sometimes some of their games. But for me, I don't know, man. I respect Barracuda and the Renegades boys a lot, but this didn't make any sense to me, Aggro, at least from where I'm sitting. Look at the schedule for last week, right? They play up against Obey and Sanguine when they end up making those changes. Then you come to this week where they're playing up against Ghost and Space Station. I'm just thinking if you're going to pick a week to bring your coach in and not have your mainline solo, last week just didn't make sense. Those to me seemed like at least more likely winnable games than this week, even if you do bring Solo or Troll back in. So I don't know. I'm really looking at this with a critical eye because I just don't think this made a whole lot of sense.
I think that's a very fair point, but that tells me at least that it had to have been a pressing issue that needed to be
It better have
resolved
been.
right at that moment. Gore, do you need to see Renegades win 1-2 games, maybe not a set, but force both sets to go to game 3? Or is there a tangible thing that you feel like you need to see out of them?
I honestly think if they can just make these games last longer, because the first one they're going to be going up against Ghost, then they're going up against Space Station later this week. It's not going to be easy for you. I think against Space Station, I want to see you push to a third game. If E United can do it, you should be able to do it at this point. But going up against a team like Ghost, it's really just don't lose in 24 or less minutes, right? If you can make it go longer than that, then you put up a good fight against Ghost. And like Finch said, these are not the most winnable matches for a team that is in the bottom 4 of the standings right now. So you really do need to just hope that whatever went on in the last week was absolutely worth it and that today you're at least going to make a splash.
Certainly some of the toughest matchups available in the SPL right now. Final K and Nika.
Yeah.
Tough hand to be dealt if you're Solo or Troll. Let's take a look at how we're feeling for our predictions so far. And Finch, last week you were still commandingly ahead. You are still ahead, but sub 80% now. We're all in the C range except for Dolson and Mifflin. But hey, that's big news. Mifflin's caught up to the community, fellas. Congratulations to him, right?
Yeah, that's rough for the community. They must be slipping, huh? If Miff's catching up to him. Come on, step it up. Cannot allow this guy to catch up to you, community. That's brutal.
Yeah, you gotta be staying on point here because we love making fun of Mifflin for that. So we're gonna need you to keep doing better in that instance. Though it looks like Mifflin has maybe thrown himself under the bus. We are all on the same page this week, except for Caleb Mifflin Sullivan picking Obey Alliance over SSG on Saturday. Is this? I don't know. I don't know what to say, man. He just does it every week. I don't know why I'm still surprised. I really don't.
I'll say, if you have like a Smite bingo card for whatever reason for the SPL, Mifflin choosing Obey should be in the center. It's like your free square, and so you can go ahead, I guess, and cover that one up and see what else happens over the weekend. I mean, that would be an insane upset, and I love the amount that he believes in them, but the rest of us like those numbers going up. I got C's through college, and it still got me a degree, but I would like to see that over 80% again.
Yeah, I'm trying to get up into that B territory. Finch is the last man who was there. Is the weather nice in 80% range or what?
Yeah, it's comfortable. You got drinks all the time, the perfect amount of sunshine. It's all there. But I do want to say at least one thing in Mifflin's favor. Obey has looked better lately. I mean, I don't know if they look beating SSG better, but I do think this is a little bit less of a throwaway than it used to be. Obey have certainly made some strides in these last few weeks.
We'll see if Mifflin can become Miffstradamus this week with the Obey selection, but we'll have to wait and see about that. No more waiting around on the waiting room. That's kind of like the point of this whole show. What I'm trying to say is SPL starting now, so tune in.